If you're watching this, then I'm dead. Or like, just unable to upload a video this week or something. But more importantly, are you familiar with a card named Sol Ring? I've spoken several times on this channel about how I don't really like the card in Commander. In essence, I think it's boring for everyone to play the same card. I dislike how auto-include cards like Sol Ring, Arcane Signet, and Command Tower put you in a position where you can choose not to run them, but doing so usually puts you at a strategic power disadvantage. And that's foolish because, you know, ultimately Commander is a game to be won regardless of what power level you're playing at. And I know that the argument to that statement will be, well, not every deck will benefit from those cards, but at least for Sol Ring, yes they will. It is a 1-drop that pays for itself and then generates additional mana. There is never any moment during a game of Commander where it isn't beneficial to draw and play a Sol Ring, even late game. Most other mana rocks cost 2, usually 3 mana, and pivotally don't generate more than they cost to play. Which means if you draw one late game, you need to make the tactical choice of, do I sink this turn's resources into something now that will only benefit me next turn, given how everyone else will be spending their turns right now to further themselves instead? But that's not the choice with Sol Ring. It is always beneficial to play it. Yes, early game you can ramp, but late game it takes away nothing from you and only allows you to do what you were already doing more efficiently. And there is not a deck out there, he says probably being confidently wrong, that doesn't benefit from that kind of boost in power. And that's just factoring in the turn that you play it, not even considering how it will also give you 2 extra mana every turn thereafter. So yeah, technically, Sol Ring should go into every deck. But that's boring. Usually my reasoning goes along the lines of, in terms of balance, everyone running a card is the same as no one running the card. And if no one is running it, then it opens up a slot in every deck for a more flavorful and interesting pick, which I think makes for a better game. But the rebuttal I hear most when I make that point is something to the effect of, but you're not guaranteed to draw a Sol Ring every game, and if you get one early then your game plan gets turbo boosted, and sometimes it's fun to play a game where you're dominant from the outset. Which I hear you, but let's ignore the fact that mulligans and card draws and tutors do raise the chance of finding one early, even if not turn 1, and how Commander isn't a solo experience. The odds of an early Sol Ring do increase when you've got 4 people with them in their decks, but ignore that. My thought whenever I hear that usual rebuttal is, whenever I've been part of a game where an early Sol Ring has happened, and the supposedly fun turbo boost occurs, I've never come away thinking, oh cool, your deck popped off because it's a good deck, or because you're super good at the game, or even, that was a lot of fun. It's always, you got lucky and you won because of the Sol Ring. And not like in a salty way. Usually the person who played it will themselves say something akin to, I was lucky to get that turn 1 Sol Ring. And so it always feels kind of anticlimactic, like a non-game. People in those situations will openly acknowledge that the card was game warping, and I just don't think that's fun. Especially because it boils basically every deck, regardless of whatever its win con actually is, down into you won because of the Sol Ring. It doesn't matter whether you win infinite, you made a bunch of tokens, or you did lethal damage with your commander. If you can point to the Sol Ring and say, that happened because of this one card and I got lucky in drawing it. I'm saying obviously the Sol Ring doesn't win on its own, you need the other cards. But if the Sol Ring is pivotal in those cards popping off, then you won because of the ring, if that makes any sense. And I wasn't expecting to talk about Sol Ring so long for this intro, but I've started, so I guess I'll finish. And because people know that's what Sol Ring does, when someone plays it early game, the rest of the table are affected in predictable ways. Some people will try to remove it, if they have the cards. Those that don't will either try to match power or maybe king make. And then there are people that will basically concede on the spot because they already know that they're beat the turn that it gets played. And like, that's also boring. An early Sol Ring has the potential to warp an entire game. But worse, warp it in the exact same way every time that one is played. And considering that there's one in basically every deck, it just means that the frequency of that series of events playing out over and over again in a game of, 20,000+ cards in it? I mean, Magic is so varied that that kind of repetitiveness shouldn't be a factor in its most popular format. It's boring even if you're the one who drew it. Especially because there are more interesting alternatives that I wish were more popular and saw more play. And that's what this video is about. Or at least supposed to be if I ever get to the point. Another problem I have with Sol Ring, is that part of the reason I think those alternatives are more interesting is because they're more flavorful. A while back I made a video where I advocated for changing how Sol Ring is handled. I made some of the same arguments there that I've made here, and I said that I hope that at the very least, WotC start giving the card more varied art that depicts a wider variety of Magic's planes. Because if we must have it in every deck, and if it can't be mechanically different, then at the very least I'd like it to be flavorfully different each time I see one played. And then the monkey's paw code, I guess. Because I kind of got my wish. And that is how Sol Ring is treated now. There's a million art variants of it out there, which I assume I've been showing on screen this whole time. And there's new ones being introduced for, this wasn't meant to be the video, sorry, this has been like a 5-minute rant about Sol Ring. And there's new ones being introduced for each new set and each new plane that we visit, all of which coming with new and admittedly very interesting and clever explanations as to how whatever a Sol Ring even is, how that fits onto that plane. The one that springs to mind immediately is the one from Duskmourn, where the Sol Ring element is a mirror that's reflecting another dimension or something, and yeah, okay, that works. Maybe that's a portal to another plane with actual real-world, natural outside lighting where it's flowing into Duskmourn's horror house for the first time, and that gives anyone who looks at it hope, hence the tap 2 to add mana. But also, the card's not in front of me. Now that I think about it, I actually think it's a portal to the ghost dimension, because it's got that static image quality that you see on their TVs, so maybe my understanding of what's being depicted on that card is flawed. Okay, let's pick another one. The Lord of the Rings Sol Rings are all the actual Lord of the Rings rings. And hey, that's clever enough. I don't know where the soul part comes into it with those, but if any ring in Magic was going to be a ring of power, then Sol Ring would certainly be it. But Christ, this is still the intro, by the way. I really shouldn't do things unscripted. I write a brief bullet point list of things that I want to talk about, like for the flow of the video, and we're still on point 1. Briefly talk about Sol Ring for the intro. I'm going to have to cut the rest of these points short, otherwise we're going to be here all day. Clearly, sometimes this sometimes happens. Sometimes when I set out to make a video on one topic, I end up getting lost in the source on something else. And when that's the situation, I just let it happen. I'll go back and I'll re-edit my scripted intro to better reflect what the video actually ended up being about. Because clearly it's the video itself telling me what it should and shouldn't be about. I chase the passion. But I guess you're witnessing that happen in real time right now, so sorry, I didn't intend to go on about Sol Ring so much. And I've still got more to say too, but this was supposed to be a video going through a bunch of less powerful, but far more interesting alternatives to Sol Ring, and giving my reasoning as to why I think if everyone was running those instead, it would lead to a better gameplay experience. Running those cards instead of a Sol Ring, I believe, would make Commander games less optimized, but more fun, which is kind of the point. And I'm really passionate about cards like that, for lore reasons. So I wanted to go through a bunch of them because they'll often be really smartly... Okay, so take one of my favourites, Honoured Heirloom, for instance. It's a symbol of faith on Innistrad made to battle the undead. And so it taps for mana because it's a symbol of empowering faith, but it also exiles a card from a graveyard like battling the undead. Storytelling through mechanics. I love it. And there are so many other cards like it. But I guess going through them is a video for another time, because today I guess we pivot, and well, like I said, I imagine I've already been showing a bunch of Sol Rings on screen anyway, so might as well lean into it. You know what, hang on. Right, there we go, I've got Scryfall up, so I can now see the Sol Rings that I imagine are on screen for myself, and let's just chat about that card, because I've still got thoughts. Because when I said earlier on that the monkey's paw curled in reference to wanting new art, that's because I was sick of seeing the same Sol Ring art over and over again. And what I longed for was cards in decks that were better representative of the deck that they were in. For instance, I think cards with squirrels on the art, or that mention squirrels in the rules text, or flavor text, are more fun and at home in a squirrel-themed commander deck than just another bog-standard Sol Ring. And really what I wanted was for Sol Rings to be removed, but I knew that people wouldn't do that unless it was banned. So I advocated for, hey, at least make the cards visually distinct then, even if not mechanically, which WotC have now done. But that's created two new problems. One, I feel like we're now even further away from having those awesome, less powerful but more interesting mana rocks, like the Honoured Heirloom, from ever becoming staples themselves. Like, let's be real, as fantastically flavorful as Honoured Heirloom is, most people couldn't be convinced to run it in place of a Sol Ring in their decks, even if their deck is Innistrad themed. It's just not that good a card, especially when compared to Sol Ring. Meaning, I feel like, and this is kind of becoming a problem with the larger game of Magic as a whole, but my complaint here is only on one symptom of the problem, as I feel like one of Magic's strengths is the idea of the varied multiverse and how each plane does things a little different, and one colour on one plane may not function the same or fit the same role as it does on another plane, for instance. And that planar distinctiveness is really a fascinating aspect of the game that I feel like we're slowly drifting away from. When we keep doing multi-planar events, like the Phyrexian Invasion and the Gatewatch and now these Omen Paths, and it all just starts to make Magic's setting feel a bit small, or like a kitchen sink where everything is kind of blandly thrown in together. Thunder Junction was the worst of this, in my opinion, because it was trying to depict all of Magic at once, but also didn't seem to have time or any care to depict any kind of conflict or interesting contrast that may arise from situations where, you know, so many different cultures would clash. Like, I'm sorry, I know it's a joke, but I just don't believe that anyone would be happy to accept a loan from a humanoid shark if they're from a place where humanoid sharks don't exist. And I just don't believe that that kind of tolerance in a setting that's, you know, supposed to represent the Old West is believable. Don't even get me started on the cactus people, so the fact that WotC just choose not to depict any of it, and instead were like, hey, look at all these weird and wacky characters all working together to do a heist. Everyone across the multiverse are friends and they're all familiar with each other on a first-name basis. We didn't want to deal with native people, so we just tried to remove them from the setting. It feels like a cop-out. Like ignoring narrative implications of what should be an obvious conflict, or just pretending that it doesn't exist. It feels weirdly sinister. But worse, I don't think that they're doing that for any kind of political reasons. I suspect it's just laziness. Individual world building is hard, and so they just want to mix all of their planes of existence together so that they don't have to worry about doing it anymore. And then skip any implications that would arise from all of these planes being mixed together, because even though these other planes have just learned that other dimensions actually exist, during a hostile interdimensional invasion, well actually now they're completely tolerant and accepting of outsiders. Because WotC said so, as that's easier for the design team. Sure, the two experiences your average survivor on Amonkhet has had of outsiders have both resulted in mass extinction level events. But of course they're happy to terraform their planet to become a motorway for those same outsiders to conduct a race through. Anything less than total unquestioning tolerance from the impoverished Amonkhet Holocaust survivor would be bigoted of them. And bugger me, we're WotC, and creating a setting with any kind of nuance requires much more work than making a bunch of SpongeBob cards, so let's just do that instead then and hope that the players have lost interest in planar distinctiveness like we clearly have. Anyway, Sol Ring. So I mentioned two issues, and the first one is that I think that these alt arts, or cards visually representing different planes but mechanically being identical, all contribute to this feeling that Magic is just one big nondescript blob of whatever, and reduces the notion that planes are unique or interesting in and of themselves. And I know that's not the case, so I don't like it. But also, the second issue it's created is now, to produce these alt arts, WotC need to find a way to justify why an artifact called a Sol Ring would be featured on the represented plane. Okay, so I'm looking at the Fallout one here, for instance. Yeah, that's a ring of sunlight, and I guess maybe you could justify the reason it produces mana is that leaving the vault for the first time would get you pumped and excited or whatever. But then I ask, why is it an artifact? Because it's not the door that you'd be taking with you, it's the Ring of Light, and that's only going to be temporary until the door is open, so at best this spell should be an instant, or maybe a sorcery. Do you get what I mean? I look at this and it grounds my disbelief while I'm trying to suspend it. So hey, let's end the video with a fun challenge. Go and grab a 10-sided dice, or if you don't have a D10, you can Google to roll a dice or whatever, or just pick a number, I don't care. And I'm going to show 10 Sol Rings on screen that each depict one of Magic's most popular planes. Unless there's not enough Sol Rings to do that with, and then I'll show some of the external IP ones too. And once you've rolled or picked your number, and you know which one you've got, I want you to go down into the comments and see if you can justify these 3 things about it. 1. Why is that card an artifact? Is the Sol Ring something that you could pick up or build, for instance? 2. What's Sol about it? In what way is it related to the sun, or does Sol, S-O-L remember, have some sort of secondary meaning on the card? And 3. Why does it generate mana? What is the Sol Ring doing that would power up whoever is wielding it? This isn't supposed to be like a gotcha, I'm not trying to prove a point here. It's just a fun thought exercise that I always do when I see a new Sol Ring, and well, I guess I am trying to prove a point. Because often when I try to answer these 3 questions when I see a new Sol Ring, I'm left wanting. And that's rarely the case with those other alternative mana rocks that I intended to talk about. So I guess my point is, I think that they're better. Oh well, I'll talk more about those next time, because for now, that's the end of the video. I look forward to reading your comments, unless, you know, I'm dead or whatever. Feel free to roll more than once, or try and answer all of them if you want a real challenge, and on screen right now, because I'm going to go through these when I upload the video, I'm going to put the one that I think fails the worst. Although I don't know what that is yet, so here it is, take it in all its glory. I don't know how many of those 3 points that I think this fails, but I think that this is the worst one for some reason. Anyway, I will see you next time. Bye! Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like 27 Publications, Eggboy the Particle that permeates all existence, Blank Space, Wanpako Jozu, Miss Murder, a random Patreon, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me and my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, talk to me about Sol Rings, and most importantly, subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know, and I will see you next time.